My pleasure to introduce our first mayoral candidate speaking today. Introduce him? Emmanuel Pleitez.
How's everyone doing today?
Very good.
Yeah, good energy.
Oh yeah.
So I'd like to spend a couple minutes here so that you introduce me, but also to kind of paint the picture of what's going on in LA and where I'm coming from and how I'm approaching the issues that we face as a city. We have a clear choice on March 5th, and the choice is between current set of elected officials who have been with us for over a decade as elected officials and some longer in public service, whether family or themselves. And we are either happy with the way things are going or we're willing to go into a new direction. What I'm proposing is a new direction. Quite frankly, when I look at the numbers and I look at the fact that we're on the brink of bankruptcy, and those aren't just my words, those are the words of the Chief Administrative Officer of the city. I also look at the unemployment rate, and we have the highest unemployment rate than any other major metro area in the country. And then I look at the high school graduation rate, and when you compare us to any other comparable city, whether by size or even ethnic makeup, we have the lowest high school graduation rate than any other comparable city. To me, those numbers just don't make sense. And look, I'm running against a few other good Democrats that have stood on the right issues, and they've stood strongly. However, I also think of, well, what's going on? What aren't they doing? And where are the funds going, and why are we on the brink of bankruptcy? And I am short of alleging any corruption or any of that stuff. I know most of these folks personally. However, I'm not short on addressing a lack of courage of addressing the most difficult issues, such as the ones that I just mentioned, from the high school dropout rate to the fact that we need to get our budget under control. I come from a different place. I was born in South LA, raised on the east side. I had to move around 10 times before I was 10 years old. My mom raised my sister and I single-handedly. We were so poor we didn't even get access to Section 8 housing because we didn't meet the cutoff. They actually didn't believe that we could survive on the money that we were able to make. So we sold candy on the street and babies' clothes. I have felt the issues that many, many families in our city are facing. And as a progressive Democrat, where I stand on making sure that the folks who are the most underserved in this city need to have more opportunity, because the only way our economy gets better, the only way job creation happens, is if we don't leave any community behind. That's where I stand. I've worked in the private sector. I've worked in the public sector, processing constituent service requests on the east side as well as at the federal level, working on President Obama's transition team and in his Treasury Department. I have a unique set of experiences that we need for the new mayor of Los Angeles.
What do you think are the top 3 issues facing the city of Los Angeles, your top 3, and what would your approach be toward resolving that?
So, 3 things. Number 1, and most critical, I touched upon it already, is the fact that we're on the brink of bankruptcy. And why is that? What part of the budget is growing and what part of the budget is not growing? Well, the part of the budget that's growing is the fact that we have to pay off a lot of the pension fund liabilities. So number 1 is that we need to address our pension fund. Our pension fund liabilities are out of control. In fact, in 4 years, they'll make up 40% of our budget. And in fact, before that, we won't be able to cut anymore. Because really, the mayor can only play with about 10% of the budget. Everything else is stuck, whether it's coming from state or federal, right, or they're in contract. So we need to renegotiate these contracts. But what I'm proposing, number 1, is a pension buyout. And for folks because this is a little wonky sometimes, I've articulated on my website, I've put up a number of slides that can articulate specifically how we're going to do this. What we need to offer is workers something today because of the promises we've made them. And so we need to look at that actual value that is owed to them and give it to them now. Right? And then we finance it so that we actually know the debt that we owe, and we can actually understand how much we're going to owe in the long run. Okay, that's number one issue. Number two is education and training. I want education and training to be a 24/7 priority of the mayor of Los Angeles. I want to put into any performance metrics that we have across all departments the fact that we need to engage, especially our troubled youth, more than we have right now. That means from a building and safety inspector walking the street and engaging a young person, to the mayor and all his appointees having to visit every single public school in our city. This is the most important thing, and this is the only way that our economy has a strong foundation, is if our workforce is skilled and educated. And number three is infrastructure and transportation. I'm tired of politicians literally always announcing subway to the sea or all these grandiose rail projects that take decades to have. And we should have them, but they should never be only on taxpayers' back. It should be a public-private partnership. And lastly, I need results today. I want to increase bus lanes. I want to have direct lanes that are only dedicated to buses, and make sure that we increase mass transit options across the city so that people can get from one place to another place in an affordable and accessible way.
Thank you. What steps will you take to address the community concerns surrounding the Santa Monica Airport? Big in this area.
Sure, no, it is big. And hearing my colleague up here speak about it, I may not be the most popular person on this. In fact, I want to say that I want to get educated more on this. However, I also think that if we have an asset, we need to figure out what to do with that asset in the best way possible, instead of just resort to shutting it down. I don't agree with shutting it down. However, I'm open to getting educated on it. What I do believe is we need to figure out what we can do with it, because we do have an asset. It's not easy to have an airport. And the fact that we do have something, let's figure out what we can do, whether it's using it as an education place or something else that is going to create actual value of the asset. Look, at the end of the day, we have a finite amount of assets in the city of Los Angeles, and how do we make the best use of them? From the airport to the ports, to the fact that we have, certain, to the museums that we have, or the, places that we can use as education institutions. I'd rather figure out what we can do with the airport. I don't want to shut it down, and I want to work with you to actually figure out and actually have a comprehensive plan for it.
Los Angeles is considered the homeless capital by some in the United States. Do you have a plan for combating homelessness in Los Angeles?
Absolutely. So, yes, it's sad we are the homeless capital, and there are a number of reasons, right? Our weather is better, and it's easier for homeless folks if they want to. If they're in survival mode, I'd rather be in the city of Los Angeles. And sadly, a lot of cities drop off homeless in our city, which is sad and unacceptable. I want to stop paying lip service to the homeless problem and actually do something about it. In fact, one of the things that gets cut is places where there's less lobby power. And there's less lobby power in the homeless community, quite frankly. And we need to be investing in it. Now, anything we do that creates a bed needs to be always supplemented with some kind of education and training component. And in this case, obviously, even more serious issues, mental health, right? Issues that actually affect a person. But I do believe every single person that's alive has value. And we need to figure out how to get that person to re-enter into society in one way or another. And sometimes it can take years, but that's what we need to do. It is an issue that cuts across the whole city, and especially in some communities that we've essentially moved the homeless to. Right? I want to make sure that programs are in there that are always about beds, but also with re-entry programs, and anything that has to do with any kind of housing or any kind of bed always has to have some education component, some mental health component. That's the only way we really tackle the homeless problem. Now, how do we do it? Look, we're facing budget cuts, and obviously, number one thing is reform the pension system, so we can actually stop cutting the programs that are for the most needy in the city. All right, but second, let's leverage the social entrepreneurship in our city. There are a lot of folks that are working on these issues and trying to put folks in the homeless community back to work one way or another. We need to create a social impact fund where we actually provide funding for these social entrepreneurs that are tackling some of the most difficult issues that governments and other institutions don't want to tackle. That's how we tackle it. I will raise a $1 billion equity fund, that part of it will actually go into these social entrepreneurship organizations that are tackling the homeless problem.
Taking it a little step further here, would you support cutting salaries and furlough days for city employees to balance the budget? Do you support cutting city workers' pensions?
So I don't support cutting workers' pensions. Salaries, I think, should be on the table, but should start from the top, the people that get paid the most, from the city council members and the mayor to the highest paid department managers, right? And you need to go down that way. And in fact, if we're cutting across the board, 5% or 10%, those are the first salaries that should get cut. Okay. In terms of how you deal with this, I want workers to get what, sadly, were over promises by our current set of elected officials, and that's why I'm proposing a pension buyout plan. So they actually get what we were promising them. And from a responsible management perspective of our budget, we need to clean up that balance sheet so that we actually can start investing into what we really need to be investing, whether it's more homeless programs or services to education and training across the city. So I don't support the fact that they are resorting to furloughs and cutting salaries of everyday workers, municipal workers, because they lack the courage of facing up to reforming our pension system and actually proposing a solution. In fact, the last few debates have actually been enlightening, even for me as a candidate, because I actually thought they actually understood the numbers in a better way. But some of the candidates I'm running against actually say that it's irresponsible to say that we're on the brink of bankruptcy. What's irresponsible to not understand it? They don't understand the numbers. Bankruptcy means that bankruptcy does not mean that you don't have any money. Bankruptcy means you do not meet your liabilities, and at that moment you say, I need bankruptcy protection. Okay, that's bankruptcy. We could have gone bankrupt last year, we could have gone bankrupt this year, but the way we don't is by cutting $250 million from our budget and cutting the essential social safety net that we as Democrats, as progressive Democrats, truly believe in. It's in our wheelhouse and we need to solve it. We're pitting municipal workers against the most neediest folks in our city. Where do you stand? Let's fix it together. It's in our wheelhouse.
Okay, this is kind of longer, but it's about Bayona wetlands. Okay, you're familiar?
I am familiar.
Okay, good. So, how would you use the mayor's office to convince federal and state authorities to undertake an alternative approach to the current bulldozing plan for Bayona wetlands, which the Sierra Club, Bayona Institute, and others are opposed to? A plan which is much the same approach to restoration that the Army Corps of Engineers took at Sepulveda Wildlife Area, rather than implementing low-impact restoration. How would you use it?
Yeah, well, the mayor does have a lot of power, and first power is the power of the bully pulpit. But second, actually organizing, and you need to organize in the community. I don't agree at all with the bulldozing plan. That should not be. That should be the last thing you shouldn't even consider it. Okay, the mayor needs to stand up and say that's wrong, and it wasn't well thought out, and we didn't get the input of the community. And in fact, when we talk about a lot of issues, the fundamental problem of City Hall is that a lot of times we think top down, and we have these experts that come in and say, oh, this is the best solution. But we always, in every issue, we need to get the input of the community, and then we need to create other alternatives, right? That's why I believe when we do have assets, which is also natural preserves, which is also, anything that's been built before and that's there, the last thing we should do is be tearing things down. We need low-impact restoration. I'm for that, and as mayor, we use the bully pulpit to convince federal and state authorities to stop what they're thinking of and actually come up with a different alternative and work with the community to come up with it. We have enough experts that are living right here, right now, that are probably in this room, that can come up with a number of other options, and that's what the mayor should be doing. It's any problem, bring in the community input, but also we have natural assets that are either natural or man-made, but that we need to leverage to the fullest.